The flames were 12 feet high. Roaring. Hungry. Gasoline-fed and furious. I could feel the heat pressing against my face like 1,000 burning hands. The rope cut into my wrists, tied so tight behind the wooden post that I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. 200 people surrounded me in that village square in northern Nigeria. Some screaming for my death. Some crying. Some just watching. Waiting to see if their God was stronger than mine. The Boko Haram commander stood 5 feet away, AK-47 slung across his chest, eyes black with certainty. He'd done this before. I could tell by the way he didn't flinch when the flames erupted. By the way he smiled, not with joy, but with the cold satisfaction of a man who believed he was doing all his work. "Renounce ISA," he shouted over the crackling inferno. The heat was so intense now that the crowd stepped back. But I couldn't step anywhere. I was tied. Trapped. About to become ash. Say the Shahada. Accept Islam. Or burn, kafir. I closed my eyes. The smoke choked my lungs. I could smell my own hair beginning to singe. This was it. This was how I died. 23 years old. A convert to Christianity for only 8 months. And now, a human torch in a village square because I refused to bow to their version of God. "Jesus," I whispered. My voice cracked. Tears streamed down my face, evaporating almost instantly in the heat. "Jesus, I'm coming home. Receive my spirit." I heard the wood collapse. The flames roared higher, louder, wrapping around me like a tornado of fire. I felt the heat for exactly 3 seconds. Searing. Unbearable. The kind of heat that melts skin and cracks bones. And then, nothing. Not cold. Not absence. But, protection. Like an invisible wall had formed around my body. Like the fire was trying to reach me but couldn't. I opened my eyes. The flames surrounded me. Completely. I was standing in the center of an inferno. The wood at my feet was disintegrating into white-hot coals. The post behind me was burning, the rope turning to ash. My hands came free. I should have been screaming. I should have been dying. But I wasn't even warm. I looked down at my clothes, a simple dress, cotton, the kind that ignites if you stand too close to a cooking fire. Not burned. Not singed. Not even smoking. I touched my hair. Intact. I felt my face. No blisters. No pain. The fire was bowing away from me. I don't know how else to describe it. Like an invisible dome surrounded my body, and the flames, furious, chemical-fueled, consuming everything else, simply refused to touch me. "Miracle," someone in the crowd screamed. "It's a miracle." The Boko Haram commander stumbled backward, his face drained of color. His mouth opened but no sound came out. He raised his rifle, not to shoot, but like a shield, like he was the one who needed protecting now. I stepped forward. Through the flames. 1 step. 2 steps. 3. The fire parted like a curtain. And I walked out of that inferno, untouched, unburned, impossible, and stood in front of 200 witnesses who had just seen the laws of physics bow to the name of Jesus Christ. My legs were shaking. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. But my voice was steady. Clear. Louder than I'd ever heard it. "Jesus is Lord," I said. "Your fire has no power over his children." The square erupted. Some people fell to their knees. Others ran. The commander backed away, tripping over his own feet, shouting orders that nobody followed. And I stood there, smoke rising around me, the charred remains of the post behind me, my dress as clean as the day I'd washed it, and I knew with absolute certainty that I had just lived through something biblical. But let me take you back. Because this miracle didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in the middle of a war zone. In a region where Boko Haram had turned villages into graveyards and churches into execution grounds. In a place where being a Christian convert didn't just make you unpopular, it made you a target. I grew up in Maiduguri, northeastern Nigeria. Borno State. The birthplace of Boko Haram. If you've heard of the Chibok girls, the 276 schoolgirls kidnapped in 2014, that happened 90 kilometers from my village. This wasn't a place where faith was theoretical. It was a place where faith got you killed. I was raised Muslim. Strict. 5 prayers a day. Hijab from age 9. Quran memorization every evening after school. My father was a respected man in our mosque. My brothers were good Muslim boys. And I was, until 8 months before that fire, a good Muslim girl. The region was bleeding. Every week, new stories. A church bombed. A pastor beheaded. A village burned because someone was caught with a Bible. Boko Haram's message was clear: submit to their version of Islam or die. And they meant it. I'd seen the videos they circulated. Men on their knees, hands tied, seconds before the blade. Women and children herded into buildings and burned alive. I lived in that fear. Breathed it. Slept with it. The kind of terror that makes you freeze when you hear a motorcycle engine, because that's how they arrived. Fast. Loud. Armed. And by the time you realized what was happening, it was too late. I didn't know it yet, standing in my village in early 2023, that I was about to become part of a story that would sound impossible. A story that would make people call me a liar, a fabricator, an attention seeker. But I also didn't know that 200 people were about to witness something that would shatter their understanding of what's possible. Because in that war-torn corner of Nigeria, where extremists believed they were doing God's will by exterminating Christians, God was about to show up. Not with words. Not with theology. But with fire that refused to burn. With a miracle so undeniable that even the militants would flee in terror. I was about to become living proof that the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is still alive. Still active. Still defending his children in the furnace. And this is my testimony. His name was Commander Usman. I'll never forget it. The way people whispered it, like saying his name too loud would summon him. Like he was a demon instead of a man. But honestly, after what I saw him do, I'm not sure there was much difference. I first heard about him 3 months before the fire. It was a Tuesday morning. I remember because I was at the borehole fetching water when Fatima came running. She was 14. Her hijab was half falling off her head, her eyes wild with terror. "They're coming," she gasped. "Boko Haram. They hit Gwoza last night. Killed everyone in the church. Now they're moving toward us." My stomach dropped. Gwoza was only 30 kilometers away. Close enough that we could sometimes hear the explosions when they attacked. But this was different. This wasn't distant thunder. This was a storm heading straight for us. By evening, the refugees started arriving. Families with nothing but the clothes on their backs. A woman carrying a baby that wasn't crying, because it was dead, but she couldn't accept it yet. An old man with a machete wound across his shoulder, still bleeding, stumbling forward on pure adrenaline. They told us about Commander Usman. "He doesn't just kill Christians," one man said, his voice hollow. "He makes it a show. He gathers the whole village. Makes everyone watch. Says he's teaching us what happens to apostates and infidels." Another woman, I'll never forget her face, aged beyond her years, spoke in a monotone, like she was reciting facts instead of horror. "He crucified Pastor John. Nailed him to wooden beams in the center of town. Left him there for 3 days. Made us walk past the body every time we went to the market." I felt vomit rising in my throat. This was real. This wasn't news footage from some faraway place. This was 30 kilometers from my home. But I was still Muslim then. Still praying 5 times a day. still believing that if I was faithful enough, obedient enough, Allah would protect me. I thought Boko Haram's violence was wrong, yes, but I also thought it wouldn't touch me. I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't their target. I was so wrong. The week Commander Usman's forces entered our region, everything changed. They set up checkpoints on every road. Young men with eyes deadened by war and hands too comfortable holding AK-47s. They stopped every vehicle. Every person. And they asked one question. Are you a true Muslim or a kafir lover? If you answered wrong, or if they didn't like your answer, you didn't make it through the checkpoint. We started finding bodies in the ditches. Headless. Left there as warnings. My father locked our doors. Told us not to go outside unless absolutely necessary. Keep your head down, he said. Don't attract attention. Pray. Allah will protect the faithful. But I couldn't stop thinking about the Christians. About the families hiding in the bush. About the pastors who refused to run, who kept holding secret church services even though they knew Boko Haram was hunting them. There was a girl in my secondary school class, Comfort. She was Christian. Quiet. Kind. The type of person who shared her lunch even when she barely had enough for herself. We'd been friends since we were 11. One day, she didn't come to school. Then another day. Then a week. I went to her house. The door was ajar. Inside, I can still smell it, blood. So much blood. Her father was face down in the main room, bullet holes in his back. Her mother in the bedroom, throat slit. Comfort's younger brothers, 9 and 6 years old, in the corner, holding each other, cold. Comfort was gone. Taken. Later, I heard she'd been forced to marry one of the fighters. Forced to convert. Forced to watch her family die and then thank Allah for her new Muslim husband. I ran home and vomited for an hour. That night, I couldn't pray. I went through the motions, the washing, the prostrations, the recitations, but the words felt empty. Hollow. I kept seeing Comfort's brothers. Kept smelling the blood. Allah, I whispered into my prayer mat, where were you? They were innocent. Children. Where were you? Silence. The next Sunday, I don't know what possessed me to do it, I snuck out before dawn and followed a group of Christians I'd seen leaving the village. They walked for an hour into the bush, to a clearing hidden by thick vegetation. And there, under the open sky with lookouts posted to warn of militants, they worshipped. I hid behind a tree and watched. They sang. Quietly, but with such intensity. Like the songs were weapons against the darkness. An old pastor, gray-haired, bent with age but fierce with conviction, stood before maybe 40 people and opened a tattered Bible. We are living in the valley of the shadow of death, he said. But we will fear no evil. Because God is with us. Not far away. Not silent. With us. And then he prayed. Not a memorized prayer. Not a ritual. He talked to God like God was standing right there. Jesus, he said, we're scared. People are dying. Children are orphaned. We're hunted like animals. But we trust you. We've seen you move. We've seen you protect. We've seen you perform miracles that defy explanation. So we're asking again, move. Show yourself. Prove to this region that you are Lord. I felt something crack open inside my chest. This wasn't the distant, untouchable Allah I'd been praying to all my life. This was personal. Intimate. Real. I didn't convert that day. But I started going back. Week after week. Hiding. Listening. Watching these people worship a God who, despite everything, they believed was good. And then Commander Usman found out about the secret church. It was a Friday. Market day. I was buying tomatoes when I saw the motorcycles. 8 of them. Boko Haram fighters, faces wrapped in scarves, weapons displayed openly. People scattered. Stalls abandoned. Mothers grabbed their children and ran. Commander Usman was in the lead vehicle. I'd never seen him before, but I knew. He had this presence, like death had taken human form. Tall. Lean. Eyes that looked through you, not at you. He wore all black, a Quran strapped to his chest in a leather pouch, and a pistol on each hip. He stopped in the center of the market. Didn't get off his motorcycle. Just sat there, engine rumbling, while his fighters fanned out. "We know about the church," he announced. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he was discussing the weather instead of pronouncing death sentences. The secret church in the bush. The Christians who think they can hide from Allah's judgment. My blood turned to ice. "We have names," he continued. "We have locations. And we have a message for anyone who follows the false prophet Isa." He nodded to one of his fighters, who threw something into the dirt. It rolled. Came to a stop near my feet. It was a head. The old pastor. The one who'd prayed with such faith. His eyes were still open. Mouth frozen in what might have been a prayer or a scream. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Couldn't scream. "This is what happens to Christians," Commander Usman said. "And this is what happens to anyone who helps them. Anyone who hides them. Anyone who converts." He looked directly at me. For one impossible second, his eyes locked on mine. And I knew, somehow, he knew I'd been going to those services. Someone had talked. Someone had seen me. "The hunt has begun," he said. "Run if you want. Hide if you can. But we will find you. And when we do, you'll beg for a death as merciful as this." He kicked his motorcycle into gear and drove off, his fighters following like a pack of hyenas. I stood there, staring at the pastor's severed head, and realized with absolute clarity, I was next. I had two choices. Renounce Jesus, a God I hadn't even fully accepted yet, and live. Or hold on to this fragile, terrifying faith, and die. I ran home. Packed a single bag. My mother saw me and knew immediately. "Where will you go?" she asked. Her voice was flat. Resigned. She knew what was coming. In this region, everyone always knew. "I don't know," I said. "But if I stay, they'll kill me. And they'll kill you for hiding me." She pressed money into my hand. 3,000 naira. About $7. Enough for maybe 3 days of food. "Go," she said. "And pray to whatever God will listen." I left that night. Walked into the bush with nothing but a bag, some money, and a stolen, broken faith in a God I barely knew. Behind me, Commander Usman was gathering his forces. Planning his next attack. Writing my name on his list. I had 72 hours before he found me. 72 hours before I'd be tied to a post in front of 200 people, surrounded by flames, facing a choice that would shatter the laws of nature itself. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I was running. And I had nowhere left to turn except up. The refugee camp smelled like desperation. Sweat, unwashed bodies, open latrines, and the sour stench of fear that settles into everything when too many people are crammed into too little space with no hope of leaving. The IDP settlement outside Maiduguri held maybe 3,000 people. Maybe more. Nobody counted anymore. People arrived daily. Some left, usually in body bags or on stretchers. Most just stayed. Waiting. For what, I don't know. For the war to end. For a miracle. For death. I'd been there 11 days when I stopped believing Allah was listening. I performed salah 5 times a day in that camp. Found a corner behind the medical tent where I could lay out a borrowed prayer mat and prostrate myself toward Mecca. Forehead to the dirt. Whispering the prayers I'd memorized since childhood. asking for protection. For guidance. For something. Nothing. Just the sound of children crying. Gunfire in the distance, sometimes close, sometimes far, always there. The call to prayer from the camp's makeshift mosque, crackling through a broken speaker, sounding more like a funeral dirge than an invitation to worship. I watched people pray. Watched them bow and scrape and recite and beg. And then I watched them die anyway. Malaria took a 6-year-old boy in the tent next to mine. His mother had prayed over him for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, barely eating, just praying. He died on the 4th morning. She didn't cry. She just stared. Like something inside her had broken beyond repair. All is well, people said. They said it about everything. The boy's death. The militants. The starvation. The bombs that sometimes fell on the wrong side of the border and turned refugee tents into craters. All is well. But what kind of God wills this? What kind of God watches children starve and women get raped at the water stations and men waste away from wounds that could be treated with basic antibiotics, and calls it his will? I started to hate prayer. Started to hate the empty ritual of it. The pretending that someone was listening when all evidence suggested we were alone. On my 15th day in the camp, I met Hadiza. She was 19. Pretty, even with the exhaustion etched into her face. She'd escaped from a Boko Haram camp where she'd been held for 8 months. Forced marriage. Forced conversion. Forced to cook for the same men who'd murdered her father. We sat together one evening, sharing a portion of rice so small it barely counted as a meal, and she told me her story. I prayed every day, she said, her voice empty. Every single day. I begged Allah to send someone to rescue me. To kill my husband in battle. To help me escape. Anything. How did you get out? I asked. She laughed. A bitter, broken sound. My husband was killed. But not by an airstrike or an army raid. He choked on meat. Meat. 8 months of begging Allah for deliverance, and my freedom came from a piece of goat that got stuck in his throat. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. That's when I stopped believing Allah cared. If he exists at all, he's not paying attention. We're insects to him. Irrelevant. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend my faith. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I was starting to believe the same thing. The nights were the worst. The camp was supposed to have security, Nigerian soldiers patrolling the perimeter, but everyone knew they were understaffed and outgunned. Boko Haram had attacked camps before. Slaughtered hundreds. And they'd do it again. So we slept, if you can call it sleep, with one ear always listening. For motorcycles. For gunfire. For screaming. I had nightmares every night. Commander Usman. The pastor's severed head. Comfort's blood-soaked house. And fire. Always fire. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, convinced I could smell gasoline and burning flesh. During the day, I tried to make myself useful. Helped in the medical tent, though I had no training. Mostly I just held people's hands while they died. An old man with a bullet wound that had gone septic. A teenage girl who'd been gang-raped and couldn't stop bleeding. A mother who'd given birth to a stillborn baby and hemorrhaged out before the nurse could stop it. Why do you keep coming back? The nurse, a tired Doctors Without Borders volunteer named Claire, asked me one day. Most people can't handle this tent for more than an hour. I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, being surrounded by death felt appropriate. Felt like where I belonged. Because I was dead too. Just still walking. I don't know where else to go, I finally said. She looked at me with something like pity. You're the girl who's been asking about the Christian services, aren't you? My stomach clenched. How do you? People talk. Especially here. There's nothing else to do. She lowered her voice. They meet on Wednesday nights. Behind the water tower. Very secret. Very dangerous. If the wrong people find out, they'll kill everyone involved. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She shrugged. Because I've seen that look before. The look of someone who's searching for something, anything, to make sense of this hell. Some people find it in Islam. Some in rage. Some just give up. She paused. And some find it in Jesus. Are you a Christian? I asked. I'm a doctor, she said. I believe in medicine and evidence. But I've been working in war zones for 12 years, and I'll tell you something I can't explain. The Christians here have something the others don't. Hope. Even when everything is falling apart, they have hope. And I don't understand it, but I've learned to respect it. That Wednesday, I went. Told myself I was just curious. Told myself I wasn't betraying Allah, just exploring. There were maybe 20 people gathered in the shadows behind the water tower. Mixed group, refugees, aid workers, even 2 Nigerian soldiers who'd converted in secret and risked execution if discovered. A man named Samuel led the service. He was 30, maybe. Scarred face from a machete attack that had left him for dead. He'd survived, and somehow that survival had convinced him that God was real. We don't have much time, he said quietly, always watching for patrols. So let's make it count. Anyone have a testimony? A woman raised her hand. My daughter had cerebral malaria. The doctors said she wouldn't survive the night. We prayed. All of us. We laid hands on her and asked Jesus to heal her. The next morning, her fever broke. The doctor couldn't explain it. Called it spontaneous recovery. But we know what it was. Another man spoke. Boko Haram stopped my bus last month. Separated the Christians from the Muslims. I'm a Christian, but I was traveling with a Muslim friend. They asked him the Shahada to prove he was Muslim. He couldn't remember it, too scared, his mind went blank. They were going to kill him. I prayed under my breath, Jesus, help him remember. And suddenly, he did. Recited the whole thing perfectly. They let him go. I know Jesus helped a Muslim man recite an Islamic prayer because I asked him to. That's the kind of God we serve. I listened, mesmerized. These weren't fairy tales or ancient stories. These were recent. Specific. Detailed. Samuel pulled out a battered Bible, pages falling out, held together with tape, and read from Matthew 11. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Rest. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt rested. Even sleep was warfare. Jesus isn't distant, Samuel said. He's not far away in some unreachable heaven, watching us suffer and calling it his will. He's here. He's in this camp. He's in our pain. And he's moving. You might not see it yet. You might not feel it yet. But he's moving. After the service, I approached him. My hands were shaking. I want to believe that, I said. But I've been praying for weeks. To Allah. And I hear nothing. How do I know Jesus is any different? Samuel looked at me, really looked at me, and said something I'll never forget. Stop performing prayers. Start having a conversation. Jesus doesn't want rituals. He wants relationship. Talk to him like he's your friend. Your father. Tell him you're scared. Tell him you're angry. Tell him you don't even know if he's real but you need him to be. He can handle your doubt. He can handle your pain. Just talk to him. That night, alone in my tent, a space I shared with 4 other women, all of them asleep or pretending to be, I did something I'd never done before. I didn't prostrate. Didn't face Mecca. Didn't recite memorized prayers. I just talked. Jesus, I whispered into the darkness, I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if you're real. I've spent my whole life praying to Allah, and I don't think he hears me. Maybe you don't either. Maybe nobody does. Maybe we're all alone and this is just meaningless suffering until we die. I paused. Tears were streaming down my face now. But if you are real, if you do care, I need you. I'm so tired. I'm so scared. I watch people die every day and I don't understand why. I don't understand what the purpose is. And if there's no purpose, if this is all just chaos and violence and death, then I don't want to keep going. My voice broke. Please. If you're there. If you died for me like they say. If you actually love me, show me. Give me a reason to believe. Because right now, I have nothing. I waited. Listening. Hoping for a voice, a vision, a burning bush, something. Instead, I just heard the camp. Snoring. A baby crying. Distant thunder, or maybe explosions. But then, something else. Something I can't fully explain. A warmth. Not physical. Internal. Like someone had wrapped a blanket around my heart. And a whisper. Not audible. Not words I could hear. But a knowing. A certainty that pressed into my spirit. I am here. And I am not finished with you. I fell asleep that night, truly slept, for the first time in weeks. I didn't know it yet, but that simple, desperate, half-faithed prayer had just activated something in the spiritual realm. Angels were mobilizing. Heaven was taking notice. And Commander Usman, the man who'd vowed to find me, was about to get exactly what he wanted. Because 2 weeks later, someone in the camp would betray me. Would tell Boko Haram where I was. Would sell me out for a bag of rice and a promise of safety. And I'd be dragged back to my village. Tied to a post. Surrounded by flames. With 200 people watching. Certain I was about to become another nameless casualty in a forgotten war. But Jesus, the God I'd barely begun to trust, was preparing to show that entire village that he is not distant. Not silent. And not finished performing biblical miracles in the 21st century. I just had to survive long enough to see it. The Bible page was filthy. Torn from the binding. Crumpled. Stained with something that might have been blood or mud or both. I found it in the trash pit behind the latrines, the last place anyone would look for anything sacred. Someone had tried to destroy it. Probably torn up their Bible when Boko Haram came through on one of their inspections, searching for contraband, for evidence of Christianity, for reasons to kill. Better to destroy the evidence than die for it. But this one page had survived. And somehow, impossibly, I was the one who found it. John 14 verse 6. That's all it was. Part of verse 5, then verse 6 in full, then the beginning of verse 7. But verse 6, those words grabbed me by the throat and wouldn't let go. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I read it 17 times that first night. Whispered it to myself like a mantra. Like a lifeline. I am the way. Not a way. Not one option among many. The way. It was so absolute. So exclusive. So completely opposite of everything I'd been taught. Islam taught many paths, many prophets, many ways to reach Allah. But Jesus, if this was really him speaking, claimed to be the only way. Either he was telling the truth, or he was a liar. There was no middle ground. I folded that page carefully and hid it in my waistband. Carried it everywhere. When fear threatened to swallow me whole, I'd touch it through the fabric of my dress and whisper, I am the way and the truth and the life. The internal war started immediately. I'd lie awake at night, arguing with myself. With Allah. With Jesus. With my own confusion. What if I'm wrong? What if Allah is watching me right now, disgusted that I'm even considering this? What if I die and face judgment, and he asks why I abandoned him, and I have no answer except that I was desperate? But then another voice, quieter, steadier, would respond. What if you've been wrong your whole life? What if all those prayers went nowhere because you were praying to the wrong God? What if Jesus has been waiting for you to turn around and see him? I was terrified of hell. The Islamic hell, Jahannam, had been drilled into me since childhood. Eternal fire. Torment. Punishment for shirk, for associating partners with Allah. And what was Christianity if not shirk? Claiming Jesus was God? Claiming God had a son? That was the ultimate blasphemy. But then I remembered something Samuel had said during one of the secret services. Perfect love casts out fear. If you're coming to Jesus out of terror, you've misunderstood him. Jesus doesn't want you to be afraid of hell. He wants you to run toward him because he's good. Was he good? I didn't know. But I knew Allah felt distant and cold and utterly unreachable. And Jesus, even though I'd barely begun to know him, felt present. Close. Like he was actually listening. I started talking to him more. Not during the secret services, those were too risky, and I still wasn't ready to publicly identify as a Christian. But alone. In my tent. Walking to the water station. Lying awake at night. Jesus, I'd whisper, I'm trying to believe. But I need help. I need proof. Not because I doubt you're powerful. But because I'm scared. Scared I'm making the wrong choice. Scared I'm going to hell. Scared Commander Usman is going to find me and kill me before I ever figure out who you really are. Nothing dramatic happened. No visions. No audible voice. But small things started shifting. I'd be spiraling into panic, remembering the pastor's severed head, imagining Commander Usman's blade at my throat, and suddenly, inexplicably, peace would wash over me. Not denial. Not ignorance. Just peace. The kind that doesn't make logical sense when you're living in a war zone surrounded by death. A woman in my tent, Aisha, a devout Muslim who prayed more faithfully than anyone I'd ever met, noticed. You're different, she said one evening. We were sitting outside, watching the sun set over the camp. Orange and red sky, beautiful and terrible at the same time. You used to look haunted. Now you look. I don't know. Less afraid. I didn't know how to respond. If I told her the truth, that I'd been praying to Jesus, she'd either report me or cut me off entirely. Muslims who sympathized with Christians were considered traitors. Almost as bad as the Christians themselves. I'm just trying to survive, I said carefully. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, are you converting? My heart stopped. What? To Christianity. Are you converting? Her voice wasn't accusing. Just curious. And sad. I could have lied. Should have lied. But something in me, something new in me, refused. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm exploring. She nodded slowly. Be careful. You know what they do to apostates. I know. They'll kill you. She said it flatly. Factually. Not quickly. Not mercifully. They'll make an example of you. Especially if Boko Haram finds out. Especially if Commander Usman hears about it. I know, I said again. Then why risk it? She sounded genuinely confused. What does Jesus offer that's worth dying for? I thought about that. Really thought about it. And I realized I didn't have a good answer yet. I was still figuring it out. Still testing this fragile faith. Still half convinced I might wake up one day and realize it was all just desperation and delusion. But I said, hope. He offers hope. Aisha laughed. A sad, bitter sound. Hope. In this place? I know it sounds crazy. It sounds suicidal. Maybe, I admitted. But I've been praying to Allah my whole life. And I've never felt what I feel when I pray to Jesus. I don't know how to explain it. It's like someone is actually listening. Like my prayers aren't just disappearing into the void. She stood up abruptly. I didn't hear this conversation. And if anyone asks, I don't know anything about your exploring. She paused. But Amina, be smart. Don't get yourself killed over a feeling. She walked away. I sat there, watching the sun sink below the horizon, and I realized I was already too far in to turn back. The next Wednesday service, I made a decision. Samuel was teaching from the book of Acts. About the early Christians. How they were hunted, imprisoned, tortured, killed for their faith. How they sang hymns in prison cells and prayed for their executioners and refused to renounce Jesus even when it cost them everything. That's the kind of faith we're called to, Samuel said. Not a comfortable faith. Not a safe faith. A faith that says, Jesus, even if you don't rescue me, even if I die in this camp, even if Boko Haram slaughters me tomorrow, you are still Lord. And I will still worship you. After the service, I approached him. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together to steady them. I want to accept Jesus, I said. He studied me carefully. You understand what you're risking? Yes. You could be killed. Probably will be killed if Boko Haram finds out. I know. Your family will disown you. Your community will reject you. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything, I said. My home is gone. My family is gone. My friends are dead or scattered. I have nothing left to lose except my life. And honestly, without hope, I don't even want that. Samuel smiled. A sad, proud, knowing smile. Then let's pray. We knelt together in the shadows. Just the two of us. No crowd. No ceremony. No religious performance. Repeat after me, he said. Jesus. Jesus, I whispered. I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you are the Son of God. The words felt strange in my mouth. Foreign. Forbidden. And somehow true. I believe you died on the cross for my sins. I believe you died on the cross for my sins. And I believe you rose from the dead. And I believe you rose from the dead. I surrender my life to you. I paused. This was it. The point of no return. Once I said these words, I was an apostate. A traitor to Islam. A target. I thought about Commander Usman. About the pastor's severed head. About Comfort, forced to marry her family's murderer. About the woman who'd lost her son despite days of faithful prayer. And then I thought about the peace I'd felt. The warmth. The whisper that had promised, I am here. And I am not finished with you. I surrender my life to you, I said. Stronger now. Whatever that means. Whatever it costs. I'm yours. Samuel placed his hand on my head. Welcome to the family, sister. You just became a daughter of the king. And nothing can snatch you out of his hand. I felt something shift. Not physically. Spiritually. Like chains I didn't even know I was wearing had just snapped. Like a door I'd been pushing against my whole life had suddenly swung open. I stood up. I was crying. Not sad tears. Not scared tears. Relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for 23 years and had finally been given permission to exhale. What now? I asked. Now you live like someone who's already died, Samuel said. Because you have. Your old life, Muslim Amina who was trying to earn her way to paradise, she's gone. You're a new creation. Born again. And whatever happens next, you face it knowing that you belong to Jesus. That's an identity nobody can take from you. Not Commander Usman. Not Boko Haram. Not even death itself. I walked back to my tent that night feeling lighter than I had in years. And also more terrified. Because I knew that this decision had just painted a target on my back. What I didn't know was how soon it would matter. 3 days later, a man I'd never seen before arrived at the camp. He asked questions. Showed people a photograph. Offered money for information. The photograph was of me. Someone, I never found out who, told him I was there. Told him about the secret church services. Told him I'd converted. That night, Boko Haram came. Not to attack the camp. Just to collect one person. Me. They dragged me out of my tent at 2 a.m., bound my hands with rope. Threw me in the back of a truck. I screamed for help, but nobody came. Either they were too scared, or they'd been warned to stay in their tents, or they simply didn't care about one more refugee disappearing into the night. As the truck pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Samuel. He was standing at a distance, tears streaming down his face, mouthing words I could barely make out. Jesus is with you. Jesus is with you. I held on to those words like a lifeline as the truck drove through the night. As we passed burned villages and mass graves and checkpoints manned by child soldiers. As the sun began to rise and I realized where we were going. Back to my village. Back to the place where Commander Usman ruled. Back to face the consequences of my betrayal. I prayed the whole way there. Not recited prayers. Just conversation. Jesus, I'm terrified. I don't want to die. I don't want to be tortured. I don't want to be made an example of. But Samuel said I belong to you now. That nothing can snatch me out of your hand. So I'm asking, begging, prove it. Please. Please. Don't let me die alone. Don't let me face this without you. Be with me. Like you promised. The truck stopped. They pulled me out. And I saw him. Commander Usman. Standing in the center of my village square. A wooden post already erected. Gasoline cans lined up. Kindling stacked high. He smiled when he saw me. That cold, satisfied smile. The apostate returns, he said. 200 people were being forced to watch. My former neighbors. My family's friends. People I'd grown up with. And they were about to witness either my death, or the impossible. I just didn't know which yet. They tied my hands first. Rough rope, the kind used for tethering goats. The fighter who bound me pulled the knots so tight that within 30 seconds, my fingers started going numb. He yanked me forward, almost made me fall, and dragged me toward the post. The wooden post. Thick. Maybe 8 inches in diameter. Taller than me. Someone had driven it deep into the ground in the center of the village square. The same square where I'd played as a child. Where we'd held weddings and celebrations and community gatherings. Now it was an execution ground. The sun was already brutal. 9 a.m., maybe. The dry season in northeastern Nigeria, temperatures climbing toward 110 degrees. The kind of heat that makes you dizzy, that bakes the moisture out of your skin, that turns breathing into work. But I was about to experience heat that would make the sun feel like a cool breeze. Commander Usman stood 20 feet away, arms crossed, watching his men work with the detached interest of someone who'd orchestrated this scene dozens of times before. He wore the same black clothing. The same pistols on his hips. But today, he'd added something new, a video camera on a tripod. They were going to record this. Distribute it. Use my death as propaganda. My stomach lurched. Vomit rose in my throat, but I choked it back down. 2 fighters pushed me against the post. My back pressed against the rough wood. Someone grabbed my arms, still bound, and pulled them behind the post, tying another rope around my torso to secure me. I couldn't move. Couldn't twist. Couldn't even bend forward. Tighter, Commander Usman ordered. They pulled the rope so tight I could barely expand my lungs to breathe. The wood dug into my spine. My shoulder screamed in protest. Then they started building the pyre. Wood. Dry branches. Old tires, rubber that would burn hot and long. They stacked it around my feet. Higher. Higher. Up to my knees. The smell of gasoline hit me before I saw the cans. 2 fighters walked around the pyre, pouring. Methodically. Thoroughly. Soaking every piece of wood, every tire, my dress from the waist down. The fumes were overwhelming. My eyes watered. My throat burned. The gasoline soaked through my clothes, cold against my skin, a sick contrast to what was coming. I looked out at the crowd. 200 people. Maybe more. Some were there voluntarily, supporters of Boko Haram, people who believed this was righteous. But most had been forced to attend. Threatened. Told that if they didn't witness the execution, they'd be suspected of sympathizing with Christians. I scanned the faces. Searching for, I don't know. Compassion? Sympathy? Someone who might help. Nothing. Just fear. And curiosity. And in some faces, a sick anticipation, the same look people get watching a car accident. Horror and fascination mixed together. Then I saw her. My mother. She was standing at the edge of the crowd, partially hidden behind other people. But I knew her face. Knew the way she held her shoulders when she was trying not to cry. Our eyes met. She looked away immediately. Turned her back. Melted into the crowd. That broke something in me. Not her rejection, I'd expected that. But the finality of it. I was about to die, and my own mother couldn't even look at me. I was utterly alone. Attention! Commander Usman's voice boomed across the square. The crowd fell silent. Even the children stopped crying. He walked toward me slowly. Performance. Theater. He was enjoying this. This woman, he announced, gesturing at me like I was evidence in a trial, was born Muslim. Raised in this village. Taught the ways of Allah. And she betrayed everything. She converted to Christianity. She worshipped the false god Isa. She committed apostasy, the greatest crime in Islam. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some angry. Some shocked. Most just, resigned. This was how things worked now. This was the new normal. The punishment for apostasy is death, Commander Usman continued. But not just death. We must make it clear, to this village, to this region, to all of Nigeria, what happens when you turn your back on Allah. He turned to face me directly. His eyes were empty. Soulless. Like looking into a void. I will give you one chance, he said quietly. Intimately. Like we were the only 2 people there. Renounce Isa. Say the Shahada. Declare that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. Do this, and I will make your death quick. Painless. A bullet to the head. Mercy. He let that hang in the air. Refuse, and you burn. Slowly. And we will watch. All of us. We will watch you scream. Watch your skin blister and peel. Watch you beg for death. And when you are nothing but ash, we will scatter your remains in the dirt like the trash you are. The crowd was silent. Waiting. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I should have been calculating. Should have been weighing my options. Thinking strategically. But all I could think was, I've been a Christian for 6 days. 6 days. I barely know any Bible verses. I haven't been baptized. I haven't served in any ministry. I've just prayed a few prayers and attended a handful of secret meetings. Was it even real? Or was it just desperation? A fleeting hope that I'm about to die for? Doubt crashed over me like a wave. Suffocating. Brutal. What if I'm wrong? What if Islam is true and I've just condemned myself to eternal hellfire? What if Jesus was just a prophet like Muslims say, and I've committed the unforgivable sin of shirk? I looked at the gasoline-soaked wood. At the fighters holding matches. At the camera recording. At Commander Usman's empty eyes. I could take it back. I could say the Shaida. I could live. Maybe escape later. Maybe find another way. Well? Commander Usman's voice cut through my thoughts. What is your answer, apostate? My mouth opened. No sound came out. I tried again. My voice was a whisper. Broken. Terrified. I don't want to die. He smiled. Triumphant. Then say the words. Renounce Isa. Accept Islam. And this ends. I closed my eyes. Tears streamed down my face. My whole body was shaking, fear, heat, dehydration, shock. Jesus, if you're real, if you're there. I need you. I need you. I'm not strong enough for this. I'm not brave enough. I don't have martyr faith. I'm just scared. So scared. And then I remembered. That torn Bible page. John 14 verse 6. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Not a way. The way. Either Jesus was telling the truth, and he was worth dying for, or he was a liar, and nothing mattered anyway. I opened my eyes. No, I said. Louder this time. Clearer. Commander Usman's smile vanished. What? No, I repeated. My voice was steadying. Not because I suddenly felt brave. But because something else was rising in me. Something that wasn't mine. Strength that I didn't possess on my own. I won't renounce Jesus. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And even if you kill me, you can't change that. His face darkened. Rage flickered in those empty eyes. You would rather burn than accept the truth of Islam? Islam isn't the truth, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Before I could calculate the cost. Jesus is. And he's worth dying for. The crowd gasped. Some shouted. Someone threw a stone, it hit my shoulder, sharp pain blooming. Commander Usman stepped closer. His face was inches from mine now. You will regret those words. You will scream them back at me. You will beg me to let you convert. But it will be too late. He stepped back. Addressed the crowd again. Let this be a lesson. This is what happens to apostates. This is what happens when you reject Allah. He nodded to his fighters. One of them pulled out a box of matches. Struck one. The flame flickered, small, almost insignificant in the bright sunlight. He tossed it onto the pyre. The gasoline ignited instantly. A whoosh that sucked the oxygen out of the air. Flames erupted, 6 feet high in a second. Orange and yellow and hungry. The heat hit me like a physical blow. Searing. Unbearable. I screamed, couldn't help it. Pure instinct. The flames climbed higher. 8 feet. 10 feet. Surrounding me on all sides. Roaring. Consuming the wood, the tires, the gasoline. The smoke was thick, black, toxic. I couldn't see the crowd anymore. Couldn't see anything except fire. The heat was impossible. Like standing inside the sun. My skin felt like it was melting. My lungs burned with every breath, if I could even call it breathing. More like gasping. Choking. Drowning in smoke and heat and terror. This is it. This is how I die. Jesus, please, please make it fast. I can't. I can't do this. I thought about the 3 Hebrew boys. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Thrown into the fiery furnace because they refused to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue. And God had saved them. Protected them. Not a hair on their heads singed. But that was the Bible. That was ancient history. That was I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. The thought dropped into my mind like a stone into still water. Not my thought. Someone else's thought. The God who saved them is the same God you just surrendered your life to. And he is not limited by time or physics or fire. Jesus! I screamed. Not just his name. A prayer. A declaration. A desperate, final, impossible plea. Jesus, I'm coming home. Receive my spirit. I felt the heat intensify. For 3 seconds, maybe less, the flames touched my skin. Burned. Seared. Unbearable. And then? Nothing. Not cold. Not absence. But protection. The heat. Stopped. I opened my eyes, didn't even realize I'd squeezed them shut. The flames were still there. Still roaring. 12 feet high now. Consuming everything. But they weren't touching me. I looked down. The fire surrounded me completely. I was standing in the center of an inferno. The wood at my feet had disintegrated into glowing coals. The ropes around my wrists had burned away. The rope around my torso had turned to ash. But my skin was untouched. My dress, soaked in gasoline, should have ignited first. Should have become a second skin of fire. It wasn't even warm. I stepped forward. 1 step. Testing. Terrified the protection would fail. The flames moved. Parted. Like they were bowing away from my body. I took another step. And another. The fire created a path. I walked out of that inferno. Through flames that should have reduced me to ash in seconds. And I emerged, in front of 200 witnesses, completely, utterly, impossibly untouched. The crowd erupted. The first thing I noticed when I stepped out of the flames was the silence. Not actual silence, the fire was still roaring behind me, crackling and consuming what was left of the pyre. But the crowd had gone completely, utterly silent. 200 people frozen in shock. Mouths open. Eyes wide. Some had fallen to their knees. Others had stumbled backward. I looked down at myself. My dress, the simple cotton dress that had been drenched in gasoline, was intact. Not burned. Not singed. Not even discolored. I ran my hands over the fabric. Dry. Clean. Like the gasoline had never touched it at all. I touched my face. My hair. My arms. Not a single burn. Not a blister. Not even the redness you'd get from standing too close to a cooking fire. Impossible. I turned around slowly. The pyre was still burning, a tower of flames 12 feet high, generating heat so intense that people 50 feet away were sweating. The post I'd been tied to was engulfed, glowing orange at the base, starting to collapse. But I had been inside that. For at least 30 seconds. Maybe longer. Time had stopped making sense in there. And I was untouched. Miracle. The shout came from somewhere in the crowd. A woman's voice. High-pitched. Hysterical. It's a miracle. Allah has protected her. No. Another voice. A man. Not Allah. She called on Isa. She called on Jesus. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some people were shouting. Others crying. A group of women fell to their knees, wailing, hands raised to the sky. Several men were backing away, terror written across their faces. And Commander Usman. Commander Usman had gone completely white. He stood frozen, staring at me like I was a ghost. Like I was something that shouldn't exist. His hands trembled. One of his fighters tried to speak to him, said something I couldn't hear over the noise, but Usman just shook his head, over and over, unable to form words. I should have run. Should have used the confusion to escape. But I couldn't move. My legs felt like water. The adrenaline was draining out of me, leaving me hollow and shaking. She called on Jesus and the fire bowed. Someone in the crowd was shouting now. Testimony. Witness. I saw it. We all saw it. The flames parted for her like the Red Sea for Moses. An old man, I recognized him, one of the village elders, pushed through the crowd. He walked right up to me, his weathered face streaked with tears. Let me see your hands, he demanded. I held them out. Still shaking. He grabbed my wrists, turned my hands over, examining every inch. Then he touched my face, my hair, pulled up my dress. Nothing, he shouted to the crowd. Not a mark on her. I've seen men die from burns less severe than what she should have endured. This is. He couldn't finish. Just fell to his knees in front of me. Forgive me, he whispered. Forgive us. We were going to watch you die. We were going to do nothing. And your God saved you. A woman broke through the crowd, running, stumbling, sobbing. She threw herself at my feet. Teach me, she cried. Teach me about this Jesus. If he can save you from that, he can save me from anything. Then another person. And another. A teenage boy. A mother with a baby on her back. An old woman who could barely walk. They pressed in around me, all talking at once, asking questions, begging to know more about Jesus. And I just stood there. In shock. Unable to process what had just happened. Unable to comprehend that I was alive. Back. Get back. Commander Usman's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He'd found his voice again. But it wasn't steady. It was shrill. Desperate. The voice of a man whose entire worldview had just shattered. His fighters raised their weapons, forcing the crowd back. Creating a circle around me and Usman. He approached slowly. His hand was on his pistol, but he hadn't drawn it. Like he wasn't sure a bullet would work on me anymore. What are you? He asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. I'm just a girl, I said. My own voice sounded strange to my ears. Distant. Like someone else was speaking through me. But I serve a God who is more than just a God. He's alive. He's here. And he just proved it. This is shaitan magic, Usman stammered. But he didn't sound convinced. Didn't sound like he believed his own words. You made a pact with demons. Jinn. You used sorcery. Then why did I call on Jesus? I asked. Why did I pray to him and not to demons? Why did I worship him while the flames burned around me? Usman had no answer. His mouth opened and closed. His face twisted, rage and terror and confusion all fighting for dominance. One of his fighters, younger, maybe 19, dropped his rifle. It clattered against the ground. Everyone turned to look at him. I can't do this anymore, the boy said. His voice was breaking. I've killed for you. I've burned villages. I've shot unarmed men. I told myself it was for Allah. That we were doing jihad. But if Allah was with us, he would have burned her. If our cause was righteous, she would be dead. He looked at me. Tears streaming down his face. What do I have to do? He asked. To follow this Jesus? To be forgiven for what I've done? Before I could answer, another fighter spoke up. Older. Battle-scarred. His voice was hard, but his eyes were wet. I saw them, he said quietly. While she was in the fire. I saw. Figures. Standing in the flames with her. Tall. Shining. Like they were made of light. The crowd went silent again. Everyone staring at this fighter. You're seeing things, Commander Usman snapped. The heat, the smoke. I know what I saw, the fighter roared. I've been fighting for you for 3 years. I've seen combat. I don't see things. There were beings in that fire with her, protecting her. And when she walked out, they walked out with her. I saw them until she was clear, and then they vanished. Another man in the crowd, not a fighter, just a villager, raised his hand shakily. I saw them too, he said. 4 of them. Maybe 5. Surrounding her. Like a wall between her and the flames. I saw them. A woman this time. Then another man. Then a group of teenagers. Angels, someone whispered. They were angels. Commander Usman was backing away now. His fighters were looking at each other, uncertainty and fear replacing their earlier confidence. The crowd was pressing in again, not to harm me, but to get closer. To touch my dress. To ask questions. To witness. An elderly imam, white beard, traditional robes, someone I recognized from the village mosque, pushed his way through. He'd been at the edge of the crowd, watching silently until now. He walked right up to me. Looked into my eyes. Studied my face for a long moment. Then he spoke. Loud enough for everyone to hear. I have studied the Quran for 53 years, he said. I have led prayers in this mosque for 30 years. I have taught hundreds of students. And never, in all my years, have I seen Allah perform a miracle like this. Not once. He paused. The crowd held its breath. But the Christian's book, the Injil, is full of stories like this. Fire that doesn't burn. Lions that don't attack. Seas that part. Blind eyes opened. Dead people raised. He looked at me. And they say these miracles still happen. That Jesus still moves. I always thought it was exaggeration. Metaphor. Stories told to make a point. He reached out and touched my dress. Felt the fabric. Smelled it, checking for the gasoline that should have been there. But this, he said quietly, is real. I cannot deny what my own eyes have witnessed. He turned to face the crowd. I am 81 years old, he announced. And I am going to say something I never thought I would say. If the God of the Christians can protect this girl from that fire, he gestured at the still burning pyre, then he is more powerful than anything I have served my whole life. Commander Usman's face went from white to red. You're a traitor. I am a man who follows truth, the imam shot back. And the truth just walked out of an inferno without a single burn. What more proof do you need? The crowd was shifting. I could feel it. The atmosphere changing. Fear giving way to AWE. Doubt giving way to belief. Commander Usman could feel it too. He was losing control. Losing his authority. His power. He grabbed his pistol. Pointed it at me. You die now, he screamed. No more tricks. No more magic. You die. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening. The crowd screamed. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact, for pain, for death. Nothing. I opened my eyes. Commander Usman was staring at his pistol in disbelief. He pulled the trigger again. Click. Nothing. Again. Click. The weapon had jammed. He threw it down. Drew his second pistol. Aimed. Fired. Click. Jammed. A third fighter raised his rifle. Aimed at me. Pulled the trigger. Click. What is happening? Commander Usman was screaming now. Completely unhinged. Shoot her. Someone shoot her. 4 more fighters raised their weapons. 4 more clicks. Not a single bullet fired. And then I heard it. A sound. Like thunder. But not thunder. Deeper. More powerful. It shook the ground. Rattled my bones. Made my teeth vibrate. Everyone felt it. The crowd turned, looking for the source. And there, at the edge of the square, light. Blinding. White. Like someone had torn a hole in the sky and let heaven pour through. I couldn't look directly at it. Neither could anyone else. People were falling to the ground, shielding their eyes, crying out. But I caught glimpses. Figures. Tall figures. 10 feet tall. Maybe more. Humanoid but more. Wearing what looked like armor, gleaming, radiant, impossible. And in their hands. Swords. Flaming swords. Angels, someone screamed. It's the angels. They're here. Commander Usman and his fighters ran. Literally ran. Dropped their weapons and fled like children running from a nightmare. Some scrambled for their motorcycles. Others just sprinted into the bush. Within 30 seconds, every single Boko Haram fighter was gone. The light remained for maybe 10 seconds more. Long enough for everyone to see it. To witness it. To know it was real. And then, it faded. Gently. Like a sunrise in reverse. The angels were gone. But their presence, that thick, overwhelming, holy presence, lingered. I fell to my knees. Not from fear. From worship. From overwhelming, uncontainable gratitude. Thank you, I whispered. Jesus, thank you. You didn't just save me. You proved yourself. To everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The young fighter, the one who'd asked how to follow Jesus, knelt beside me. Please, he said. Tell me. What do I do? How do I become his? I looked at him. At the elderly imam. At the woman who'd begged to learn. At the village elder still on his knees. At the crowd of people, at least 50 of them, pressing in, desperate, hungry for answers. And I realized, God hadn't just saved me from the fire. He'd saved me for this moment. You pray, I said. My voice was stronger now. Clear. You tell Jesus you're sorry for your sins. You believe he died for you and rose again. And you ask him to save you. That's it. No ritual. No performance. Just faith. Can we do it now? The young fighter asked. Right now? Here? I smiled. Yes. Right now. And there, in the village square, with the pyre still burning behind us, with smoke rising into the sky, with 200 witnesses watching, 17 people prayed to accept Jesus. Including the 81-year-old imam. Including 3 former Boko Haram fighters. Including my cousin, I hadn't even seen her in the crowd, who'd been too afraid to speak up before but now ran forward, weeping, ready to surrender her life to the God who'd just proven he was real. The miracle wasn't just that the fire didn't burn me. The miracle was that God showed up, undeniably, impossibly, publicly, and changed everything. The news spread like wildfire. Faster than wildfire, actually, because the fire itself had been slow compared to how quickly word traveled through that region. By sunset, 3 neighboring villages had heard. By the next morning, refugees in camps 50 kilometers away were talking about it. Within a week, the story had reached Maiduguri, Jos, even Abuja. The girl who walked out of the flames. The Boko Haram execution that turned into a miracle. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the immediate aftermath. About the witnesses. Because what happened in that village square wasn't just dramatic, it was documented. Verified. Testified to by people who had everything to lose by admitting what they'd seen. Remember that video camera? The one Commander Usman had set up to record my execution for propaganda? It captured everything. The flames. My emergence, completely untouched. The crowd's reaction. The jammed weapons. Even the light at the end, though on the recording it's overexposed, too bright for the camera to properly capture. But you can hear it. That sound like thunder. And you can hear the screaming. The witnesses. The conversions happening in real time. One of the villagers, a man named Ibrahim who'd been forced to watch, grabbed that camera after the fighters fled. He hid the memory card. Kept it safe. Because he knew. He knew people would call this story fake. Would say we made it up. Would dismiss it as religious hysteria. But you can't fake video. 3 months later, Ibrahim managed to get that footage to a Christian human rights organization. They verified it. Analyzed it. Brought in experts who confirmed the footage hadn't been doctored or manipulated. This is the most compelling evidence of a modern miracle I've ever seen, one of the analysts told me later. His name was Dr. Michael Chen, a video forensics specialist from Singapore. Not a Christian at the time, he was agnostic, hired specifically because he wasn't religiously biased. I've spent 20 years analyzing footage, he said. Looking for fakes, for CGI, for editing tricks. This video? Clean. Unaltered. Which means one of two things: either this is the most sophisticated hoax ever created, which would require technology that doesn't exist yet, or, he paused, uncomfortable even saying it. Or we just watched something that defies the laws of physics. I met Dr. Chen 6 months after the miracle. He wanted to interview me personally. Verify my story. Look for inconsistencies. We talked for 4 hours. He asked everything. Medical history, checking if I had some rare condition that makes me resistant to burns. I don't. My background, looking for evidence of stage magic training or performance experience. I have none. He even asked about the gasoline. Was it real? Could it have been water? The video shows the flames, I told him. You can see how they burned. How fast they consumed the wood. That wasn't water. That was gasoline. He nodded slowly. I know. I had 3 fire safety experts review the footage. They all confirmed, based on the flame color, the speed of combustion, the smoke density, that was a legitimate gasoline fire. Temperature would have been between 800 and 1000 degrees Celsius. Exposure for more than 5 seconds would cause third-degree burns. You were in there for at least 30 seconds. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. I don't know what to do with this information, he admitted. I'm a scientist. I deal in evidence. And the evidence says you should be dead. But you're sitting here. Talking to me. Without a single scar. So what will you conclude? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll conclude that I witnessed something I cannot explain. And that perhaps there are things in this universe that science hasn't caught up to yet. 2 years later, I heard Dr. Chen became a Christian. He never told me directly, I found out through mutual contacts. But apparently, he couldn't shake what he'd seen. Couldn't explain it away. And eventually, the only explanation that made sense was the one he'd been avoiding: God is real. And he still performs miracles. But Dr. Chen wasn't the only witness who couldn't let it go. There was Aisha, the woman from my tent at the refugee camp. The one who'd warned me not to convert. She heard about what happened 2 days after the miracle. At first, she thought it was rumor. Exaggeration. The kind of story that grows in the telling. Until she ran into Ibrahim at a market. He was there selling vegetables, trying to survive like everyone else. And when he recognized her, knew she'd been my tent mate, he pulled her aside. It's true, he told her. I was there. I saw everything. The fire didn't touch her. The flames parted. And when Commander Usman tried to shoot her, her weapons jammed. 4. What are the odds? Aisha didn't believe him. Until he showed her a photograph on his phone. A still image pulled from the video. Me, standing in front of the flames, dress intact, arms raised, face tilted toward the sky. She stared at that photo for 5 minutes. Just stared. She should be dead, Aisha whispered. I know. The gasoline. I heard they used 10 liters. Maybe more. Closer to 15, Ibrahim confirmed. I helped carry the cans. I smelled it. I saw them pour it. Aisha looked up at him, tears in her eyes. Where is she now? Hiding. Moving from place to place. Boko Haram has put a price on her head. But she's alive. And she's telling everyone who'll listen about Jesus. 3 weeks later, Aisha found me. I was staying in a safe house run by an underground church network, basically just a concrete room with no windows, a mattress on the floor, and bars on the door. Not exactly comfortable, but safe. She knocked. When I opened the door and saw her, I almost cried. Aisha. Teach me, she interrupted. No greeting. No small talk. Just desperation. Teach me about Jesus. I can't stop thinking about what happened to you. I've been praying to Allah my whole life, asking him to show me he's real. Begging him. And nothing. But you pray to Jesus one time and you walk out of a fire. I need to know if he'll do the same for me. We sat on that mattress for hours. I told her everything. My conversion. My doubts. The prayer in the refugee camp. The moment I stepped out of the flames. The angels. Angels, she repeated. You saw angels? I didn't, I admitted. But 17 other people did. Including 3 Boko Haram fighters who converted because of it. She was silent for a moment. Processing. If I do this, she said slowly, if I convert, my family will disown me. My husband, I haven't told you, but I have a husband, he stayed in our village when I fled, he'll divorce me. I'll lose everything. I know, I said gently. I lost everything too. But you gained something, she said, looking at me intently. I can see it. You're different. You're at peace. Even hiding in this concrete box, running for your life, you have peace. I want that. I need that. Aisha became a Christian that night. And 3 months later, she brought her sister. And her sister brought a friend. And that friend brought her cousin. One miracle created a chain reaction. Then there was Yusuf. One of the Boko Haram fighters who'd been there. Not one of the ones who converted immediately, he'd been part of the group that ran. But he couldn't forget what he'd seen. For 2 weeks, he tried to convince himself it was sorcery. Jinn. Demonic power. Anything but what it actually was. But then he had a dream. He told me about it later, after he'd defected from Boko Haram and found me through the Christian underground network. I saw him, Yusuf said, his voice shaking at the memory. Jesus. In my dream. He was standing in fire, just like you were. But this fire was different. Bigger. Consuming everything. The whole world was burning. And he looked at me and said, "You've been serving death. Come serve life." Yusuf woke up screaming. His fellow fighters thought he was losing his mind. The dream came again the next night. And the next. And the next. Always the same. Jesus in the fire. The invitation, come serve life. On the 5th night, Yusuf couldn't take it anymore. He stole a motorcycle and fled. Left Boko Haram. Left everything. Spent 3 days riding across the bush, dodging checkpoints, using back roads, until he found a church that could connect him to me. I don't know what to do, he told me when we finally met. I've killed people. Christians. In the name of Allah. I've burned churches. I've executed pastors. How can Jesus forgive that? I told him about Paul. Saul of Tarsus. Who'd hunted Christians. Dragged them from their homes. Held the coats of the men who stoned Stephen to death. And Jesus appeared to him on the road to Damascus and said, "I'm choosing you." If Jesus can forgive Paul, I said, he can forgive you. Yusuf wept like a child. This man who'd carried an AK-47 and murdered in the name of religion, broken, desperate, undone by grace. He prayed that night to accept Jesus. And the next morning, he told me something that made my blood run cold. "Commander Usman is obsessed with you," Yusuf said. "He can't sleep. Can't eat. Everyone in the group is talking about it. He's convinced you're a witch. That you made a pact with Shaitan to gain power. He's put a bounty on your head, 100,000 naira. And he's told his fighters, whoever brings you to him alive gets promoted. Because he wants to kill you himself." Slowly. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you need to leave," Yusuf said urgently. "Nigeria isn't safe. Boko Haram has networks everywhere. Informants. Sympathizers. They will find you eventually. You need to get to a refugee camp across the border. Cameroon, maybe. Or Chad. Somewhere they can't reach you." He was right. I knew he was right. But I also knew that God hadn't saved me from that fire just so I could hide. "I'm not running anymore," I said. "God saved me for a reason. To tell this story. To be a witness. If I hide, if I stay silent, then Commander Usman wins. Fear wins. I won't let that happen." "Then you'll die," Yusuf said flatly. "Maybe," I admitted. "But I already died once, in that fire. I should be dead. Every breath I take now is bonus. If God wants me alive, I'll stay alive. If he calls me home, I'll go home. But I'm not making decisions based on fear anymore." Yusuf stared at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, the first real smile I'd seen on his scarred face. "You're insane," he said. "But I believe you. And if you're staying, I'm staying too. You need protection. You need someone who knows how Boko Haram thinks. How they operate. You'd do that?" I asked. "Risk your life for me?" "You walked out of a fire," he said simply. "If God can do that, he can keep both of us alive." Yusuf became my bodyguard. My brother. My fellow witness. And together, we started traveling, carefully, strategically, to churches, refugee camps, villages. Anywhere people would listen. And everywhere we went, the same thing happened, conversions. Muslims who'd heard the story and wanted to meet me. To verify it was real. To hear it from my own mouth. And when they saw that I was just an ordinary girl, no special powers, no magic, just faith, they couldn't deny it anymore. The evidence was too strong. The witnesses too numerous. The video too clear. In the first 6 months after the miracle, I personally witnessed over 200 people accept Jesus. And that's just the ones I met. I heard reports of hundreds more, people who'd heard the story secondhand or seen the video and decided to take the risk. To explore Christianity. To pray to Jesus and see if he'd answer. The elderly imam, the one who'd testified in the village square, became one of the most powerful evangelists in the region. Because when an 81-year-old Muslim scholar with decades of Islamic teaching publicly declares that Jesus is Lord, people listen. He told me once, months after his conversion, "I wasted 53 years studying a book that kept God at a distance. Jesus brought him close. That's the difference. That's why I'll never go back." Even some Nigerian soldiers, officially Muslim, afraid to publicly convert, started attending secret Christian services. One of them told me, "I've seen a lot in this war. I've seen evil. I've seen suffering. But I've never seen hope like what you Christians have. And after what happened to you in that fire? I want that hope. I need it." The miracle didn't just save my life. It started a movement. An underground, dangerous, costly movement of Muslims questioning everything they'd been taught. Of people risking death to explore the possibility that Jesus is who he says he is. And all because fire refused to burn. Because weapons refused to fire. Because angels showed up in a village square in northeastern Nigeria and proved that the Bible isn't just history, it's active, present, real. I'm alive today because Jesus wanted the world to know he is still performing miracles, still fighting for his children, still showing up when it seems impossible. And 200 people can testify to it, including former enemies, including lifelong Muslims, including a video forensics expert who thought he was too smart to believe in miracles. The evidence is overwhelming. The witnesses are credible. The story is true. And it's not over yet. I'm writing this from a small room in a refugee settlement on the border of Chad and Nigeria. It's not much: concrete walls, a single light bulb that flickers when the generator works, a mattress on the floor that I share with 2 other women. The heat is suffocating during the day. The cold bites at night. I own 3 dresses, 1 pair of sandals, and a Bible that's falling apart from use. By worldly standards, I have nothing. By kingdom standards, I have everything. It's been 2 years since the fire. 2 years since I stood in the center of an inferno and walked out untouched. 2 years since angels appeared in a village square and proved to 200 witnesses that God is real and active and unstoppable. And I'm still alive. That might not sound like much, but in this region, for someone with a story like mine, for someone with a price on her head, being alive is its own miracle. Daily. Ongoing. Sustained. Commander Usman is still hunting me. I hear reports every few months. He's convinced I'm a witch. Convinced I have demonic power. He's told his fighters that killing me would be a service to Allah, that eliminating me would prove Islam is stronger than Christianity. But he can't find me. And not for lack of trying. 3 times, Boko Haram has raided places where I'd been staying: churches, safe houses, refugee tents. And all 3 times, I'd left hours before they arrived. Not because I'm smart or strategic. Because God moves me. Sometimes through a dream. Sometimes through a fellow believer who gets a feeling that I need to relocate. Sometimes through circumstances that seem random but in hindsight are clearly divine. Like the time I was supposed to stay in a church compound in a small village outside Maiduguri. I'd arrived, unpacked my bag, was about to sleep. And then the pastor's wife came to me, her face troubled. "I don't know how to explain this," she said, "but I feel like the Holy Spirit is telling me you need to leave. Tonight. Now." I didn't argue. Didn't question. I've learned to recognize God's voice, not audible, but undeniable. That internal knowing that bypasses logic and speaks straight to your spirit. I left within the hour. Walked through the night to a different village 12 kilometers away. The next morning, I heard the news: Boko Haram had attacked that church compound. Burned it to the ground. Killed the pastor. Abducted his wife and children. If I'd stayed, I would have been there. Would have been captured. Would have faced Commander Usman again, and this time, there might not have been a miracle to save me. But I wasn't there. Because God moved me. Protected me. Kept me one step ahead of death. That's my life now. Constant movement. Never staying anywhere longer than a few weeks. Living out of a single bag. Trusting that every meal, every safe place to sleep, every moment of protection is a gift from God. Provided. Sustained. Miraculous in its own quiet way. And in the midst of that chaos, that danger, that uncertainty, I have peace. Not the absence of fear. I'm still scared sometimes. Still wake up from nightmares where I'm back in the fire, or captured by militants, or watching people I love die. But underneath the fear is this unshakable foundation. This certainty that I belong to Jesus. That he bought me with his blood. That nothing, not Boko Haram, not Commander Usman, not even death itself, can snatch me out of his hand. I've told my story over 1,000 times now. In refugee camps. In underground churches. In secret meetings where believers gather at night, risking their lives just to worship. And every single time, people ask me the same question. how do you keep going? How do you live like this, constantly running, constantly in danger, and not give up? And my answer is always the same. Because I've seen what God can do. I don't have to wonder if He's real. I don't have to hope He'll show up. I know He will. Because He already has. And if He can protect me from fire, from bullets, from militant armies, He can protect me from whatever comes next. And if He doesn't, if tomorrow is the day I die, then I die knowing that I've lived more fully in these 2 years of following Jesus than I did in 23 years of trying to earn my way to heaven. 3 months ago, a journalist found me. A woman from the BBC who'd heard about the story and wanted to verify it. She was skeptical, I could tell from her questions, from the way she kept asking for evidence, for proof. So I introduced her to the witnesses. To Ibrahim, who still had the video footage. To the elderly imam, who'd converted and was now leading a secret Christian fellowship. To Yusuf, the former Boko Haram fighter who'd defected after his dreams about Jesus. She interviewed 15 people. Separately. Asked them to describe what they'd seen. Looking for inconsistencies. For contradictions. For signs that we'd coordinated our stories. Every single testimony matched. Down to details like the color of the flames, the number of weapons that jammed, the sound that came before the angels appeared. This is either the most elaborate hoax I've ever encountered, she told me, or it's real. And the more I investigate, the more I'm convinced it's real. Does that bother you? I asked. She hesitated. Yes. Because it means I have to rethink everything I believe about how the world works. About God. About miracles. About whether any of this, religion, faith, spirituality, actually matters. It matters, I said gently. You're here, aren't you? Risking your safety to come to a war zone to investigate a story about fire and angels. Something inside you is searching. Hungry for truth. That hunger? That's God. Pulling you toward Him. She didn't convert that day. But 3 weeks later, I got a message through the Christian Underground network. She'd prayed. Asked Jesus to reveal Himself to her. And He did. Through a dream, just like Yusuf. Just like so many others. The miracles haven't stopped. They've just changed form. I don't need to walk through fire again. But I see God move daily. Providing food when we have nothing. Opening doors that should be locked. Softening the hearts of soldiers at checkpoints who should arrest me but instead wave me through. Healing people who pray in faith. I've seen infections disappear, fevers break, chronic pain vanish after simple prayers in Jesus' name. This is what it means to live in the book of Acts. Not comfortable. Not safe. But alive. Fully, dangerously, miraculously alive. I've lost count of how many people have come to Jesus through my testimony. Hundreds. Maybe over 1,000 now. Muslims, animists, even atheists who'd written off religion as superstition. They hear the story, or see the video, and something breaks inside them. The walls they'd built against God crumble. And they're left with a choice, accept that miracles are real and Jesus is who He says He is, or reject the evidence and stay in their comfortable unbelief. Most choose Jesus. Because the evidence is too strong. The witnesses too numerous. The video too clear. But let me speak directly to you now. Yes, you, watching this video, listening to this story, may be skeptical, may be curious, may be desperate like I was. If you're Muslim, I understand your fear. I was you. I prayed 5 times a day. I fasted. I recited the Quran. And I felt nothing. Just emptiness. Just distance. Just the crushing weight of trying to earn something that can never be earned. Jesus doesn't ask you to earn salvation. He offers it. Freely. Completely. Not because you're good enough, none of us are good enough, but because He is. Because He died in your place. Took your punishment. Rose from the dead to prove He conquered death itself. I'm not asking you to abandon your culture or your family or your heritage. I'm asking you to meet the person of Jesus. To talk to him. To test him. He can handle your doubts. He can handle your questions. Just try. Pray to him. Say, Jesus, if you're real, prove it to me. I'm willing to believe, but I need help. He answered that prayer for me. He's answered it for hundreds of former Muslims I've met. He'll answer it for you. If you're atheist, if you think this whole story is fabricated, exaggerated, the result of mass hysteria or religious delusion, I get it. I would have been skeptical too before I lived it. But answer me this, what would it take to convince you? If video evidence isn't enough, if 17 independent witnesses aren't enough, if lives transformed aren't enough, what would be enough? Are you really seeking truth? Or are you just committed to your unbelief? I'm not asking you to believe blindly. I'm asking you to investigate. Look at the evidence. Interview the witnesses. Watch the footage. And then make a decision based on facts, not feelings. Not comfort. Not what's convenient. If you conclude it's fake, fine. But if you conclude it's real, then you have to grapple with what that means. That God exists. That he intervenes. That Jesus is alive and active. And that maybe, just maybe, he's pursuing you too. If you're Christian, but you've been living like miracles died with the apostles, like God is distant and uninvolved, like the Bible is just ancient history with no relevance to today, wake up. God is still moving. Still performing miracles. Still rescuing his children. Still proving that he is alive. But he's looking for people who will believe. Who will step out in faith. Who will risk everything because they've tasted his goodness and they can't go back to playing it safe. Stop living a lukewarm faith. Stop treating Jesus like a philosophy instead of a person. He's not a good teacher or a moral example. He's the living God. And he wants to do in your life what he did in mine, prove that he's real. Powerful. Present. And if you're desperate, if you're at the end of yourself, if you've tried everything else and nothing works, if you're facing impossible circumstances and you have nowhere left to turn, call on Jesus. Not as a last resort. As your only resort. Because he's the only one who can save you. The only one who can step into your fire and make the flames BOW. The only one who can take your brokenness and turn it into testimony. I don't care what you've done. How far you've fallen. How much you've messed up. Jesus specializes in impossible cases. In broken people. In situations that look hopeless. If he can save me, a Muslim girl from a war zone with nothing to offer him, he can save you. So I'm going to pray. And if you want what I have, if you want peace in the chaos, hope in the darkness, life that's truly life, pray with me. Out loud or in your heart. It doesn't matter. Just mean it. Jesus. I don't know if you're real. But I want you to be. I'm tired of trying to save myself. Tired of pretending I have it all together. Tired of living in fear and emptiness and doubt. If you died for me, if you rose from the dead, if you're alive right now and listening, save me. Forgive me. Come into my life. Make me yours. I surrender. I'm yours. Whatever it costs. Wherever it leads. I'm yours. If you prayed that, if you meant it, you just became a miracle. You just passed from death to life. From darkness to light. From lost to found. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the adventure. Welcome to a life where fire refuses to burn, where angels show up in war zones, where God proves over and over and over that he is real and powerful and head over heels in love with you. This isn't the end of my story. It's just the beginning. Because every day I'm alive is another day to tell people about Jesus. Another day to be a witness. Another day to prove that the God of the Bible is still performing miracles in the 21st century. And maybe, just maybe, your story is just beginning too. Don't wait for a fire. Don't wait for militants. Don't wait for desperation to drive you to Jesus. Come now. While you can. While the invitation is still open. While your heart is still beating. Because Jesus is alive. Miracles are real. And He's waiting for you. Come home.